Welcome to the podcast. So, one of the things that I've been talking about are the 6 stages of grooming and manipulation. And I was able to read a lot of this on Oprah.com. Dr. Michael Wellner talks about the 6 stages of grooming. And we've talked already about the first stage, which is targeting, your victim. You have to find the perfect target that we we've discussed in some detail how to pick a target, someone that might be vulnerable, someone that has a need, and all of these are pieces of the grooming stages. The second thing that we've already talked about is gaining the victim's trust. We talk about the perpetrator has to gain trust in order to be able to have access into the world of that child. And sometimes they do that not only by gaining the victim's trust, the child's trust, or the teenager's trust, but also the trust of parents and people around the um, the intended victim. All right, so now we're going to go into the third stage of grooming and talk a little bit more in detail about how they fulfill a need. This is filling a need and playing a role in the child's life. That is the third stage. So when you can fulfill a need, then all of a sudden that builds trust in and of itself. So a perpetrator may take on a special role in that child's life. Um, Birchtold, for example, being so helpful, he knew a need that my mom had and said, "Hey, I know that Bob goes to work early. I gotta take my boys down to the same grade school as the girls go to. I'll just pick up the girls on my way down." He lived just a block and a half up the way. And so I'll just go ahead and pick them up. And then you don't have to run the girls to school. And sometimes we would walk on nice days, but it's cold in Idaho. So that was a nice thing that he offered to do. So he filled a need in my mom's world in order to gain special access and would get us all in the car. And the first thing he would say is, "Okay, Brobergs, it's going to be a great day." He'd do that at our door as he'd open the back door and we'd all come running. We'd hear his voice, come running with our backpacks and our stuff, our school supplies and our homemade lunch that mom had made for each of us and go pile in his car. It's going to be a great day. And then in the car, he would further that special relationship with all of us. And we would listen to fun songs. He had one of those, what was it called? An 8-track tape player in the car. It was like those bigger tape things. And we listened to all kinds of music. And he would try to find things that he thought we would know and that we could all sing together. And then he often would say, "Okay, besides your parents, who do you love most?" And we'd all say, B, brother B. We'd go through the thing and we'd pile out of the car at Washington Elementary School and off we'd go to school. So when I look back on that, I'm like, oh, well, that was just the beginning of him creating a special role in my life. And as they manipulate that relationship so that that one person is the only one that understands how special that relationship is, he would do other things when I was, alone, in just an opportunity. Oh, now she's by herself. Let me see if I can fulfill the need in the way that Jan is special, that she is a person that has special talents. And I'm going to say things like, I know somebody in Hollywood that, that girl that just did that, movie, Tatum O'Neal with Ryan O'Neal, and we had just watched that movie, or something. And he would say, I know the director of that. And someday I'm gonna talk to him about getting you an audition. So he would make you feel special, that he saw your special talents. He would come to every play with his whole family that I was ever in. So some of the shows that he saw me in were like Oliver, and I played Oliver. I had my short shag, little pixie kind of haircut, and I got the leading role as Oliver. And I think I said this somewhere in another podcast episode, but he literally from him and his family sent a beautiful bouquet of flowers, and it was on the dressing room table, for Oliver. Oh, my dad was so mad. Anyway, that was, I think, because that show happened about the next summer is when he took me for the first time, or the following fall, I mean, not summer. The musical was in the summer, and it was that fall that, he kidnapped me, but my dad was pulling away by that point. But boy, to me, it just felt like I was the most important, special person, in the world, and he understood what I loved and what I wanted, and he knew how to prey upon that. He could fill that need. One of the other things about making me feel special was when I was, you know, kidnapped in the back of the motorhome, and the voices said that I had a very important mission, that I was to save an entire dying planet. And just the idea that I had a very important purpose and I was going to play a role in this very special mission made me feel special, even though it was the doorway into all of the abuse. I also had this very heightened sense of I have always been that kind of as a young girl, I was always the person who could see if someone was being made fun of or being bullied. There was a girl in our grade school who walked on crutches because she was crippled. And that's what, the kids would make fun of her. And they had little rhymes about that and about her condition. And I would, and I was only a couple years older. I think I was a second grader and she was in kindergarten or first grade. Maybe I was 2 years older, might have been third grade. And I would be the one that would run up to those, fifth or sixth grade boys that were, chanting this thing and throwing little pebbles and rocks and, yell at them. And I was like, 50 pounds or something. I was tiny, but I was always, that came with me. That was part of who I was since I was born. Like, I'm going to defend the underdog, which is something that I think I got from my mother and my father. They were always taking in people that maybe didn't have other friends or had special, some special needs. And we had several of those that were throughout our entire life, even into adulthood, that, we also were friends with them and their struggles throughout life. So I think he knew that about me, that I had a heightened sense of like, I'm going to stand up for the little person or the person who's being hurt or harmed or who's in trouble. And so making me have this special mission was another way to show that I had a special purpose. And that resonated with me, that to save a dying planet made me very important and that I had to do these things because it was something beyond just myself. So, yeah, perpetrators, they can exploit a young person's empathy. They can convince a young person that, he or she is the only one who understands them. Another reinforcement of that is when he would tell my parents that he had depression and that he was seeing a psychiatrist or a psychologist, somebody, a therapist. I don't even think they called them that, counselor. I don't know what the terminology in the 70s was, but it was new. It was new to have that kind of a doctor, to go see a doctor about depression and what exactly is depression. And all of those things were new terms anyway. And he said, I've been seeing this really amazing counselor in Beverly Hills. I have to go there to find somebody really, really good at dealing with my depression. And he's given me these tapes, cassette tapes. Now we have cassette tapes. First, it was those 8-track tapes, and then cassette tapes came around about this time. And he said, I just need to. I'm supposed to listen to these tapes by okay, how to explain this is really difficult, but he would basically say, my sister and my aunt are part of my depression story. And he would tell my mom different things than he would tell my dad about what happened with his aunt and then how he was trying to protect his little sister. And so the depression part, as he inserted various stories to different people, kind of all around the same thing, but he'd say the right thing to dad and the right thing to mom and a different thing, to me. But he basically said I need to lay by a child about the age that I was when I really knew that I was having a problem with depression. So he said, I felt like my abuse, or he didn't ever, I don't even think he used the word abuse. The things that happened with my aunt happened when I was really young, and it was about age 8, 9, 10 that I started to have these feelings of this terrible depression. And because it was a woman, um, I need to lay by a female around the age that I was. So I was about that right age. I was 10 or 11 at this time. And so, with the door open, on top of the covers, he would lay down. I was asleep. I don't even remember him being there, but he would lay down on top of the covers on this to the side of me on my little bed, and he would put these big earphones on, and he would listen to these tapes, and they lasted 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes long, no longer than that. And then he'd be done. That was his part of his therapy, and, he'd go back upstairs and talk to mom and dad for a few minutes, and then, he'd leave and go home. So, I look back on that and so many people who've lost their minds over that story. I'm like, it's interesting because, my mom was somebody who would do, and put away clothes and iron and do laundry, old school. And so she'd be in and out of my room, opening the drawer, putting some laundry away in my room while he was laying there on the bed. And dad would be home, either upstairs reading the paper, or he might be downstairs, maybe, talking to mom while she was, doing her last of her housekeeping work. And sometimes dad would help. You know, he was, um, he was that kind of a husband that he would help. And also, fold clothes or put things away, not as much as, my mom did, but it wasn't that the door was closed. They could see it. It was hiding in plain sight, so to speak, that he was doing all of these things to exude empathy and sympathy and, wrangling my parents into his whole story of his own things. That reinforcement that he would basically give to them was that, "See, I'm just laying here listening to this tape, and it's helping me with my depression. Nothing's happening." And so I find the manipulation of someone like this and the slow, steady burn of just that constant one little thing here, one little thing there is going to add up to a ton of trust so that nobody sees what's coming. Um, so when they reinforce the needs of the child or the young person, by using their mental illness or whatever, um, it's really hard to tell that you're being manipulated because, you talk about, how's it working? Are you doing okay? I mean, it's not just, oh, hey, I want to lay by your daughter and listen to some tapes because they're going to help me with my depression. It's them being involved in his angst, in his problems. And he did that so well, and he did it a lot of times separately so that they each felt a special kind of relationship developing, and that is just such a tactic. And then also with me, separating me from the other kids, finding the opportunity to do that so that he could talk about things that were important and special to me. So, one time, he actually staged an entire scene where he had been injured, in order to gain some sympathy and some concern. So someone can, he staged something that we look back on now and go, "Oh my gosh, that was just him staging that he was hurt." And um and he would even do that with he would often use other members of his own family, like talking about one of his children who was having a problem with my mom or with my dad, depending on who might feel the most empathy towards that child. It's just so sly and so subtle. And so he's, spilling his heart about, his relationship with his wife to my dad. And then saying, do you think that Marianne could help her, dress like this or, be more attractive, like apply makeup like your wife does? Or I mean, he would find a way to make a compliment inside of a ask. And then my dad's the one saying to my mom, he's just really thinking that maybe you could teach her some of your style. I mean, it's a compliment to my dad about my mom and a compliment to my mom trying to get something out of them that would connect them even further into his spider web. So a person may, act like your best friend. They may look like someone you can confide in, that you can tell your secrets to, things that maybe your own parents may not understand. And yet the whole time it was grooming and manipulation. It was filling needs, filling a need inside of that child. Sometimes approaching a child and all you have to say is, "Oh, I know your parents don't understand how amazing you are as an actress and that you wanna go be in movies and be on TV. I mean, you could be Jan Brady in the Brady Bunch. I mean, your name is Jan, and you could have been her, or the shows that we're watching on TV at that very moment, or you could have been, one of the Partridge Family kids. You sing and you can act. You could have been one of those kids on the Partridge Family. These are shows we're watching every day religiously. We watch the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family, and I Dream of Jeannie, and you start to see where he can insert a compliment or play into your needs in a way that maybe your parents don't understand. And so I think as you start to see through these stages of grooming, as you start to see the tactics that come through, you'll be able to really maybe notice something that you wouldn't have noticed before. So that is really summing up this third stage of grooming through some of my own personal experiences, how they fill a need, how they make you feel special, and how they find a need and help fill that need. So for me to be, you know, a warrior for others that were being hurt, like at school, in grade school, he knew that about me. He knew those stories because he'd ask, what happened at school today or yesterday when he was driving us to school? And I just, I just think if we could see past the normal amount of someone, being interested in your child and what is not normal. However, a lot of it was out of sight. My parents wouldn't have seen a lot of these times when he was filling that need or that interest and saying, I can help you with that. So they're very tricky. It's very tricky. But as we talk more about this, I think we'll become better educated and be able to have more awareness so we can prevent more abuse happening than than is necessary. And we have to get honest and real around our families and around our children. We have to be able to hear real things without, freaking out so that they're not scared to tell us or worried about our emotions. We really have to learn how to be tempered in our responses. And we have to be able to see what we see and not second guess ourselves. We have to trust that intuition, the heart centered and the gut, that, ooh, something's off. There's both those parts of human beings that we are out of touch with, and we got to get back in touch and trust that they are telling us the truth. So recognizing the signs of grooming is such an important piece in preventing and hopefully bringing awareness to childhood sexual abuse. I just can't overstate it enough. Parents, neighbors, church leaders, teachers, anyone out there who is in the lives of children, you can make a difference in one or even many children's lives if you will notice and trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. So if you are concerned at all, please speak up. If something does not seem right, please speak up. Together we can end childhood sexual abuse if we know what to look for. Everyone here at the Jan Broberg Show and at our foundation We believe people. We hear and support all survivors. So if you would like to share your story of grooming or manipulation, please contact my team at jan@janbroberg.org. And your story will remain anonymous and will be shared as part of our 365 days of grooming and manipulation. Thank you so much for listening.